Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. Forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, today I thought that what we would work on is shoulders. So a little bit of mobility, a little bit of stabilization, and a little bit of lengthening. So it's gonna be super handy today if you have a strap or a belt, or if you don't have one of these, you could use a broomstick or a dowel or something that will give you something to hold on to about outer shoulder width distance. If you don't have that, you can always do all of the motions that we're going to be doing without a strap or a dowel, but it can be super duper useful. As always, I will give you lots of options along the way, particularly for the strengthening part, which might end up having a little bit of sneaky core involved as well. So let's get set up. I'm going to start lying down. You're welcome to join me there as well if you wish. Maybe I'll set my blocks up in a different pattern today, just mess with the system. If you prefer to start seated, you're welcome to be there. Right, this is your yoga class, so do whatever you want to do with it. Maybe you feel like turning me off, and that's okay too. So you might have your legs outstretched, you might be in starfish position, you might just have the knees bent, in which case consider taking the feet mat width apart, let your knees hanging toward each other. Maybe take a little loop of your shoulders toward each other, so you can have a little lift through your heart, right? So already starting to open through the fronts of the shoulders anyway. And then for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. And exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. And then continue breathing however you need to, whether it's in and out through your nose or your mouth. Notice how your breath is flowing, if it feels really open and spacious. And acknowledge that for whatever it's worth. Maybe you notice some sticky or choppy spots along the way, in which case you could gently try to lengthen the breath in those parts just to smooth it out a little bit more. With each exhale, can you imagine releasing more tension through the shoulders, through the chest? It might even require a little wiggle through the shoulders, just to notice if you're holding any tension there. Last few breaths here. And then when you're ready, start to bring a little bit of movement back to your body. Whatever way feels best. It could be really small, wiggle of the fingertips or toes, or a little rock of the head from side to side, or maybe a big yawning full body morning stretch. Even if it's the evening, you still do a morning stretch. And then when you're ready, bend your knees and draw your knees in toward your chest. Take a little rock from side to side. You might draw circles here with the thigh bones and the hip sockets. Basically just mobilizing however you need to. And then gently come back to center. Okay, so we're gonna start to do some shoulder work, and you'll be on one side, and I want you to imagine like a clock face, right? So one side, we're gonna be moving our arms counterclockwise, the other way we're gonna move it clockwise. So just sort of get that idea in your head to start with, and then roll over onto your left-hand side. So you might bring a pillow or a block, something underneath your head, just to give yourself a little bit of lift, right? So your neck isn't cranked, give your shoulders a little bit of space here. And I want you to bring your top arm, so your right arm, to match the left. And then imagine we're gonna start to go counterclockwise. So your arms, imagine that if you're like the face of a clock, they're at 3 o'clock position right now. We're gonna start to go counterclockwise. So touching the floor as much as you can the whole way. Start to drag your fingers up to 12 o'clock. Oh, that feels like a good side stretch. And then you're gonna start to open to 9. Now maybe you've got some shoulder issues and the fingers don't touch, that's okay. You can hover the arm, and then over to 9 o'clock. So now you're in a big twist, and then start to draw your fingers around across your hips at 6 o'clock, and then all the way back to 3. So we're gonna keep doing these, just a couple more, as slow as you need to go. I've of course set myself up right next to my bookshelf, so I don't get the full range of movement, but this is about you, right? This is your class, it's not mine. And the next time you open up into the twist, so arms at 3 and 9, maybe you pause here. You can deepen it a little bit more if you wish. Maybe getting some nice release through that top shoulder, so the right shoulder across the chest. Sort of depends on the position here. And then slowly start to finish off that circle back across 6 o'clock, and then to 3. All right, roll over to your other side. I'm gonna flip just so that I'm still facing you as we do this, but you can just roll over if you want to, unless you need to see me. So coming onto your right hand side now. Bend the knees, right? Find a nice comfy position. Take your time to, find that position, and then palm to palm, sort of forearm to forearm. Now imagine that your hands are at 9 o'clock, and we're going to move the top arm, the left arm, clockwise this time. So drag the fingertips, if you can, on the floor up to 12 overhead, and then around and open to 3, and then down across the hips at 6, and then we meet back at 9. So you might notice from one side to the other, maybe one side the arm has to hover the whole way. Maybe on the other second side, you've got not just fingertips and palm, but maybe forearm can reach the floor the whole time. And it's not a contest to see, right? It's just working the mobility of your chest, your shoulders. Okay, the next time that you open up into the full twist, so arms at 3 and 9, pause there. A few breaths here. Again, feeling that opening through the left chest and shoulder. Sometimes when we pin the hips first for a twist, it gets more into the upper body. Right? Usually we pin the shoulders or the back and then move the hips side to side to get into a twist. So it's kind of a different way to get into it. All right, slowly start to finish off your circle, your rotation, across 6 o'clock at the hips and then back to 9. All right, push yourself up. And then let's meet on hands and knees. Remove any props out of your way that might be there. And then set up in that really nice quadruped position. So knees underneath hips, toes can be tucked or untucked, whatever works best for you. Hands outer shoulder width apart or wider, fingers spread nice and wide. And then let's move through cat and cow. Inhale, lift the tailbone, hollow through the lower back, broaden through your collarbones. Exhale, tuck your tailbone under, round through the spine. Really press the floor away from you. Inhale, starting with the tailbone, allow the movement to go all the way up to the crown of the head, and then starting with the tailbone again, tuck it under, and press the floor away. So a few more of these undulations. You might be moving faster than me, you might be moving slower. It doesn't matter. Move how you need to move. And in that spirit, maybe there's some other movement here that would feel really good than just a standard cat and cow. Maybe it's a little wiggle from side to side, or taking bigger circles. Maybe you go into sort of big barrel rolls through the chest and shoulders. And go where you need to go. Last couple breaths here. All right, and then slowly come back to center. So we're going to stay on hands and knees. This will be option 1 or level 1, I guess, of intensity. You might come up onto fists if that feels better for your wrists. Level 2 is to shuffle the knees back or walk the hands forward, depending where you are on your mat, and then shift your weight forward into a low plank, or a plank from the knees, I suppose. And then option 3 will be to tuck the toes and lift the knees up. So wherever you are, we're going to start to do what's called scapular push-ups. So keep the elbows straight and then lower the chest through the shoulders and then press the floor away from you. So it's a very subtle movement. It's just the shoulder girdle moving here. Retraction of the shoulder blades, press the floor away, protraction of the shoulder blades. Maybe you've tested it out on just hands and knees. Maybe you decide to shift forward into that knee plank. Maybe you're like, I did this loads of times, and I'm going to do it from full plank. Now you might not get as big of a range of motion, but that's okay. You're strengthening in a different way. And then gently lower your knees, shake out your hands, shake out your wrists. You might even do some of these sort of like tennis thingies. And then let's meet back on hands and knees. You might choose to stay here or tuck your toes, lift your hips up and back into downward facing dog. So a bit of shoulder strengthening, right? While you're here, press the floor away from you with your hands. So there's a mini shrug of the shoulders. Not so much that you're compromising the space between the shoulders and the ears, but enough that you're not just hanging out in your shoulder joints. Right? You want them to be active. When you think of gymnasts tumbling across the floor, right? They're not retracting and dragging their shoulder blades down their back. They're pressing the floor away from them so they can have that strength, that activity through the shoulder girdle. Last couple breaths in your downward facing dog, whether you're still or in motion. If you're on hands and knees, maybe do a couple more scapular push-ups. Okay, wherever you are, bend your knees, look forward. Take as many steps as you need to come into your standing forward fold near the top edge of your mat. You might choose to rest your elbows on your knees or thighs today for a little bit more support, or bring hands to a block. You might choose to clasp opposite elbows with hands. Maybe get a little sway from side to side. Gives you a bit more traction through the spine. Make sure your knees are micro bent or even deeply bent. Right? You don't necessarily want them fully straight, and you certainly don't want them hyperextended behind you. And it's a tough cue for me to teach because a lot of the time we don't listen necessarily to the teacher, right? We just do what we usually do. I get it. Right? Sometimes I tune out. I'm just there for my yoga class. I feel like I know what to do, but it's so important to have a micro bend in the knees here. All right, release your hands, and then with fingertips to shins or the earth. Inhale, a little partway lift, belly bend to spine. Exhale, let it all go. Couple more. And then bend your knees, Head heavy, arms heavy. Slowly start to roll up to standing. One vertebra at a time, slow as you need to go. Until eventually you come all the way up to standing. Couple loops of your shoulders up, back and down. Little wiggle, noodle, or release. All right, if you have a strap or a dowel, go ahead and grab it now. If you don't worry about it. Again, I will give you options. But it's something that I really recommend you getting because it's a really great way to get into the shoulders, whether it's a strap or a broomstick or a dowel. All right, feet hip width apart. Start with the hands nice and wide. So if you weight lift, it's kind of like your snatch grip. You want the dowel or the strap sort of at the hip crease, at the pockets of your jeans. And then jeans, I haven't worn jeans in like a year and a half. Good old COVID. Okay, squeeze the bum. Tailbone to the ear slightly. Belly onto spine, shoulder blades on your back. On your inhale, start to reach the strap or your arms or whatever up to the sky. Now, as soon as we get here, we kind of tend to dump into the low back. So make sure that you're not arching there, right? Nice tension on the strap or on the dowel, pulling the hands away from each other. If you don't have a dowel or a strap, just mimic the movement and then slowly start to bring it back. Now you might pause and feel like, oh, that's enough. Maybe you go a bit deeper. Maybe you go all the way back. Now from here, you can drop one hand and then bring the dowel or strap back around you, or maybe you come back up and then forward. So we've done this a few times. This shoulder flossing, really, really fantastic movement to lubricate those, the glenohumeral joint. So the shoulder joint, right, where the arm attaches to the torso. Make sure the posture is nice and tall. You can always change the width on the hands. Maybe you go wider, maybe you go narrower. Sort of just depends on if you have any injuries. For me, this feels too easy on one arm, but pretty tight on the other. So I'm just gonna keep it here. All right, next time you come forward, shake out the hands. Okay, and then take a narrower grip this time. So think maybe shoulder width apart, like your downward facing dog stance. Same thing, nice and active through the lower body, and then inhale your arms up overhead. Now again, if you don't have a strap or a dowel, you can mimic the motion, or you can try to even clasp your hands if you wish, but that can be a little bit tight on the shoulders. And then slowly bend the elbows, tension on the strap, on the dowel, bring it back behind. When you get to the nape of the neck, then bring it back up. And then slowly down and up. So these are called pull aparts. It's also a really great movement for warming up the shoulders. This is something that we do before weightlifting. And then shake it all out. All right, same sort of wide-ish grip to start with. Inhale, the arms up overhead, bend the knees, tuck the tailbone under and start to pull over to the left. So getting rounding through the spine and then swoop around to the right. As much as you're pulling with one hand to the right, resist with that top hand and then come up. Okay, so now pull both arms, or rather the bottom hand over to the left. Resist with the right hand, the top arm. Hips go over to the right to give you a little bit more balance. Maybe you scoop that bottom armpit underneath to open up to the sky a little bit more. And then come back to center. Let's go the opposite side. Shift the hips over to the left. Arms go to the right. Pull down with that top arm or bottom arm. Resist with the top arm. Keep breathing. I realized I was just holding my breath. Scoop that bottom armpit underneath, lift, open, and then slowly come back to center. Whew. Shake it all out. All right, this time you bring your strap or your dowel behind you. and take sort of outer hip width grip on them. If you don't have a dowel or a strap, don't worry. Follow along, I'll give you options in a second. All right, feet hip width apart, little micro bend in the knees, shoulder blades on the back, retract the elbows, bend the knees, and start to come forward into your forward fold. Now, as soon as we do this, we start to lose the activation, right? Gravity wants to pull our shoulders forward. So can you loop them back and away from the earth? And then tension on the strap or the dowel, inhale, start to lift it up. Maybe a little bit, maybe up to the sky, maybe to the wall in front of you. If you don't have a strap or a dowel, you can interlace your hands and do the same motion, or even grab opposite elbows with hands if you wish. Once you're here, you might change the grip, the width between your hands. You could be still, you could sway a little bit from side to side. Right, this is a really great hamstring stretch as well, but make sure you've got at least a micro bend in the knees. Keep retracting the shoulder blades, so drawing them toward each other so that the shoulders don't dip forward. And then slowly, gently bring the dowel or the strap back to your low back, and then change the grip. So if you were palms up, now go palms down. If you're interlacing your hands, take the opposite interlacing of your fingers. All right, wrap the elbows, the shoulder blades toward each other, get all the activations going, and then inhale, lift the strap or your arms or whatever up and away. Again, those shoulders want to dip forward, so keep them wrapping away from the floor. Maybe rock a little bit from side to side. And it might feel super different depending on the change of grip here. If you feel pain at any moment, back out of it. And then slowly bring it back to the hip and then ditch it off to the side. Let's take a little bounce. And then for 3 breaths, inhale, a little partway lift. Exhale, let it go. 2 more. All right, bend your knees. Come down to hands and knees. Shake everything out. I don't know about you, but my glutes feel really tight after all that. Whew. Must have been what I did yesterday, because I don't think it's anything that we've done today. All right, lots of stages, lots of options coming for you. So, a little bit more shoulder stability work. Option 1 is going to be on hands and knees. Right? It's not going to be very challenging, but you will get some stabilization here. Option 2 is going to be forearms and knees. And then it's going to be a little bit closer to what we're doing. It might feel awkward, but you can always bring one knee down and one foot extended. Option 3 is going to be a full plank here. So a couple breaths, squeeze the bum, squeeze the tops of the thighs. And I want you to take your left hand, maybe bring the elbow out a little bit wider, and then bring your left fingertips toward your right elbow. From here, start to shift your weight over onto the outside edge of that left foot, coming into side plank on the left side. And then slowly unwind, bring the right elbow down, right fingertips pointing to the left, and then roll to side plank on the opposite side. So we're just gonna keep switching side plank. And it's less about the side plank here and the position of the hips in the air, whether you're on your knees or your toes, and it's more about the shoulder stability as we work through this. And if you find you're moving back on your mat, then start to switch the arms as you go forward. So a couple more of these, whether you're on hands and knees, forearms and knees, or forearms and toes. Last 2. All right, back to center. Release your knees down. Whew. Shake it all out. Okay, so that one, we were rotating the upper body mostly as the instigator for the movement. This time, we're gonna keep the forearms down and just rotate the lower body. So now we're working the shoulders isometrically, which means the contraction doesn't lengthen and contract. It stays active at that stabilization point, but you will get a little bit of extra core. Okay, so come back. Whether you're in hands and knees or forearms and knees or forearms and toes, find a nice stable position. Fingers could be interlaced. You could have the hands out. You could be in fists, whatever works best for you here. And then step back into your plank. Hug the legs toward each other, squeeze the bum. Keep your elbows on the floor. Rotate both heels over to the right. And then come back to toes. And then both heels over to the left. And then back to center. And then right. So we're just gonna keep moving this way, twisting the lower body side to side. So an isometric contraction through the shoulders, but really great core oblique work for the lower body. My hips are probably lifted a bit high here, but that's better than having them sink down. Last couple. It's getting hard to talk. Okay, bring your knees down. Whew. Shake everything out. If you're comfortable on your belly, make your way onto your belly. Let's get a little release. Feel the core, or at least the front of the core. Tops of the toes press into the earth, hug the legs toward each other, tailbone to the back wall, belly bend to spine, and then a little baby cobra. Inhale, lift up. Maybe that feels good. Maybe you press up a little bit higher. Wrap your shoulders onto your back. Option to stay here. Maybe you reach your arms back along beside you. Palms can face up or down. Or you can interlace your hands behind your back. Or if you have your strap handy, you could use the strap. Some of you might stay here. Some of you might reach your legs so far back that they de-weight as well. Hug everything back into the center line. And then reach your toes, your fingers back even further. Okay, exhale, release all the way down. One cheek to the floor, deep belly breaths to release through the lower back. And then make your way onto your back. And hug your knees into your chest once you're there. A little rock from side to side. And let's end with the opposite sort of twist. So knees stay lifted. Maybe you shift your hips right a little bit to start with. Right arm out to the side. Exhale, lower the knees to the left. Just for a couple breaths. So this might feel really different to the first twist that we were doing, and that sort of clock face exercise. And then inhale back to center. Reset your pelvis and spine. Left arm out to the side. Exhale, lower the knees to the right. Again, as gentle or as deep of a twist as you need. And then inhale, come back to center. Now set up wherever you would like to go for your rest. You could be flat on your back, legs bent or straight. It might feel really great to bring a bolster or a couple pillows behind your back so it lifts the chest up a little bit to rest in a sort of supported fish variation. Maybe I'll teach that in a class to come. You could rest on your side or in child's pose or in a seated meditation. And there's no rush to find your pose of rest. But once you are there, for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. And exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. With each exhale, let your body melt a little bit deeper into the earth. Try to let go of your breath control. Let go of any last muscle gripping or tension, particularly in the face, the neck, and the jaw. And stay here longer if you can, 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.